866-34-TRUTH. We'll start in Flagstaff, Arizona. Michael, welcome to the Line of Fire.
Hey, Dr. Brown, thanks for taking my call, and I appreciate you making yourself so accessible on your radio program by taking calls. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, my joy to do it, man. Thanks for being part of it.
Of course. So I'm in conversation with a lot of LDS online, in Facebook groups and stuff like that. And the conversation of polytheism and multiple gods is always coming up because of their belief in a multiplicity of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have came in contact with one guy who claims to be a scholar for the LDS Church, and he brought up Genesis 35:7.
Okay.
And this is one example of how in the Hebrew language, which I'll be clear, I'm very ignorant to, but because I've never taken a class on it or anything, but he says that in that passage, the proper rendering of Jacob meeting God would be the gods revealed themselves to Jacob. And so he also said that the Jewish Study Bible, the second edition, confirms this, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to get your thought on that.
Yeah, so again, anyone reading Hebrew would see that this is different than the normal pattern. So you have the word for God is Elohim, and Elohim is a compound noun. So it is a plural form, but with singular meaning for the God. And it's occurs... let's just do a quick count here and see. Yahweh occurs as a distinct name for the Lord over 6,000 times, and Elohim occurs, well over 2,000 times. So Elohim can mean gods, small g, in the plural. It can refer to angels, divine beings, as in, for example, Job chapter 1. Or it can refer to the God. Now, this is a standard Semitic grammatical phenomenon. In other words, that when you speak of majesty or power or intensity, you can do so in the plural. So the Hebrew word for compassion is rachamim, which ultimately comes from womb, but it's a plural noun, but singular, rachamim. It's singular compassion, but it's a plural noun. The same for face, perhaps because of having different components. Panim is a plural noun in Hebrew, but it just means face. And for example, in an inscription to the Pharaoh from correspondence called Elamarna correspondence written in Akkadian, Babylonian, Assyrian language, they refer to Pharaoh, the single person, as my gods, plural, because Pharaoh was worshipped as a god, and when you speak of a god, you speak in the plural. So this is commonly known. So when it speaks of Ha Elohim, the God, it's speaking of the one God, the creator, okay? So 99% of the time, the verb that goes with it is a singular verb, all right?
Exactly.
This is one of the rare times when it's a plural verb. Why that occurs is debatable, but here's what we know. Genesis 35 refers back to what? God appearing to Jacob in Bethel, right?
Exactly.
Okay, and what happens in Bethel? Is there any plurality of deity there in any way? Is there even a hint of it in any way? No, not at all. So we go to Genesis chapter 28, and it speaks of Yahweh standing there saying, I am Yahweh, the God of your father, Abraham, the God of Isaac. I will give you and your offspring the land that you're now sleeping on, etc. It's verse 16. Jacob says, surely Yahweh is in this place, and I didn't know it. And then he names it the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. And then in verse 20 of chapter 28, he goes into a long vow. If God will be with me and watch over me on this journey. And all the verbs used there are all singular, okay? So the God who appeared to Jacob was Yahweh, one single deity. And that's who's being referred to in chapter 35. So the fact that this is one of the rare times where Ha Elohim, God, the God, has a plural verb, the fact that it occurs says nothing in terms of the nature of God. You have grammatical peculiarities all through the Torah and all through the Hebrew Bible, and grammatical anomalies. That just happens with ancient languages and dialects and even transmission of texts and things like that. So to try to read something into it is to really butcher the Hebrew, to be honest. It's to butcher the larger context And it's to try to take a grammatical anomaly and now to make a mountain over something that's like a grain of sand.
Okay, perfect. And then what about his claim as well? Because I've had many LDS tell me this. Well, the Jewish people, they actually were very pluralistic in their view of God. And I know that in many spots we see that the Jews go astray and they do worship other gods, but those are obviously condemned as false gods. So, but his claim of, well, this is in the second edition of the Jewish Bible, as well as many LDS saying that, well, the early Jews, they actually did have a pluralistic view of of many true gods.
That's okay. Whatever you're going to find in the Jewish Study Bible reflects excellent scholarship, more conservative, liberal leaning than Orthodox leaning. But in any case, there is no argument that Israel in its earliest days might have had monolatry versus monotheism, meaning Exodus 15:11, Mi kamocha Adonai Bailim, who is like you, O Yahweh, among the gods. That there were other gods, so-called, just as the New Testament speaks of other gods, so-called, but they're not really gods at all. And Yahweh throughout the scriptures constantly says, I am the one true and only God. So monotheism would say there's one God only and no other gods of any kind exist. Monolatry would say there is one God who is the one true God among these other false gods. And we would say today the other false gods are really demons. It's demon power behind these other false gods, so that the false gods of the nations are really not gods at all. But you do definitely find that expression of other deities, but Yahweh is the supreme deity and the only one worthy of being called God. He is the only creator. He is the only uncreated one. He is the only one with absolute power. He is the only one who knows the beginning from the end, and so is different than all of the other so-called gods. Is there any denial that there's a spirit realm? No denial at all. Is there any denial that there's a Satan and demons in the New Testament? Not at all. And Satan and demons were worshipped as gods by people in the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. So the very most you could say is they recognized there were these other so-called gods, but they were false gods, they were idols, and God judged Israel for following them. The argument of the LDS people here would be akin to saying, well, Hugh Hefner was raised Methodist, so John Wesley believed in having many women. It's that ludicrous and ridiculous if he was raised Methodist, whatever. But you get the point.
Yeah, so you would say there are no Jewish scholars over history that are Orthodox that would make that kind of claim at all.
No, they would recognize monolatry. In other words, that Yahweh was supreme among other so-called deities. But you have to be a very liberal scholar and just buy into liberal scholarship of the Bible to say, well, he was just a competing deity among other deities. Then you're not believing anything in Jewish tradition whatsoever. It would be like a liberal scholar of the New Testament denying that Jesus rose from the dead. Yeah, you have those out there, but that is absolutely not mainstream what the churches believe, or, speaking of our subject, what the synagogue is believed. So thank you, sir. Great questions. Much appreciated.
Thank you.